Good evening, muy buenas noches desde Milwaukee, Wisconsin. En este foro de frente al voto esta noche, LULAC y Noticias Univisión presentan una conversación con 4 de los aspirantes demócratas a la presidencia. Les agradecemos que nos acompañen esta noche a través de las plataformas digitales de Noticias Univisión. Y antes de comenzar con nuestras conversaciones, quiero presentar al presidente y a la CEO de LULAC, a Domingo García y a Cindy Benavides, para que nos acompañen en el escenario y nos ayuden a comenzar ya con esta velada. To get things going, Cindy, Domingo, welcome on stage. Thank you for having us. We need a mic. That's important. Let me get you a mic. We need a hand mic over here. Oh, over here. Got it. Excellent. Smooth as live television can be.
Cada 30 segundos, una persona de origen latino cumple 18 años de edad en los Estados Unidos. Esto equivale a casi 1 millón de latinos alcanzando la edad de adultos anualmente. Imagínense el gran poder de nuestra comunidad. Muchos de nosotros somos elegibles para hacernos ciudadanos americanos y cuando lo hacemos, podemos ejercer nuestro derecho para votar. Hoy día, tenemos la oportunidad de escuchar a los candidatos compartir sus puntos de vista sobre los temas que más impactan a cada uno de nosotros y a nuestros hogares. Recordemos siempre, nuestro voto es nuestra voz.
Buenas tardes, LULAC familia and Americans across the United States and Puerto Rico. Today, LULAC is here in our first presidential town hall meeting so that you will have an opportunity, members of the Latino communities from coast to coast, to talk to the presidential candidates about the concerns and the issues that are across the board. And our issues are American issues. They're the issues about health care, climate change, issues regarding criminal justice reform, and immigration reform, and what to do with the refugees on the borders. So what you will be seeing tonight, for those of you who are not familiar with LULAC, we are the largest and oldest Latino organization for civil rights in America. We've been here since 1929, and here we are 90 years later in 2019, and we're still standing up for Latinos across the United States of America. So, go to LULAC.org, find out more about us, join and donate to LULAC, because today we're going to show you what LULAC is about and what Latino and the road to the White House goes to the barrios, the colonias, and the neighborhoods, not only of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but of every major city in America. With that, let's bring out our first speaker and guest. I'd like to introduce to you the former mayor of San Antonio, the former secretary of HUD, who has a twin brother. I don't know who's the best or worst half, Joaquin. And by the way, my son is named Joaquin also. And that is Secretary of HUD, Julian Castro. Julian. Told you.
Gracias, señor. Gracias, Juan. Good to see you. I got it. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. Secretary Castro. Good to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. Gracias. Please, over here. Just a quick heads up before we get started. You have 2 minutes as an introductory round to talk to the audience, and then we'll get going with the questions. Just a quick thing, I'm going to try to do the question first in Spanish and then in English, sure, because we're live on Univision. So you have 2 minutes as an introductory round.
Gracias, Enrique. Es un placer estar aquí. Y gracias a LULAC, and thank you to Domingo and to Cindy and to all of our LULAC chapters out there. It's great to see y'all here in Milwaukee. Well, I am Julian. As many of y'all know, I have a twin brother, Joaquin, but Joaquin likes to say that the way to tell us apart is that I'm 1 minute uglier than he is, which is not true. I'm happy to be here this evening for a conversation about the future of our country. Just a few days ago, we had our first presidential debate, and at the end of the debate, I said that I was happy to be there, and that my presence on that stage marked some of the tremendous progress that we have made as a Latino community. And the question before us in the next few months is, what kind of country do we want to become? I'm able to stand on this stage, and so many of you are able to do the work that you've done and achieve the dreams that you've achieved because generations have worked for progress in our country to make sure that no matter the color of your skin, you could get a decent education, that when you went out looking for an apartment to rent or a home to buy, that you wouldn't be discriminated against, making sure that you could get good job opportunities, and that you could exercise your right to vote at the ballot box. The question before us is whether we're going to continue to be that country that expands opportunity to people no matter who they are, what they look like, how much money they have or don't have, how long they've been in our country, what their last name is. Or are we going to go backward and become a nation where opportunity is only afforded to those who look a certain way, who live a certain way, who sound a certain way? I believe in an America that is broad, that is expansive, that is full of opportunity for hardworking Americans all over our country. I'm glad to be here because I know that so many people in this room have made that kind of beautiful progress possible. Gracias. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing as part of LULAC to create a stronger America for all of us. I look forward to a conversation about how we can make our country even stronger and ensure that all of those folks whose shoulders we stand on, we do right by passing that opportunity on to the next generation in a country that is better than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Castro, again. I think within the past 6 months, we've talked over tacos, we've talked over books, and now we get to talk in front of the LULAC audience and the audience.
We ate some tacos at Mi Tierra in San Antonio, which they will be familiar with.
Of course, an institution at Mi Tierra where you got engaged with your wife. Just quickly, show of hands. How many of you in the audience have ever been told to focus on speaking English or not speaking Spanish at all? ¿Cuántos han sido aquí, les han pedido que solo hablen inglés o que olviden hablar español en algún momento de sus vidas? So that's probably around half of the audience here. You explained that yourself in an interview recently with us and then with CBS News also. Usted explicó eso, secretario Castro, recientemente en una entrevista. Le preguntaría, ¿cómo podemos hacer para que la gente siga celebrando el español como un lenguaje americano y al mismo tiempo hacerles entender que la manera en la que tienen que acercarse al votante latino es mucho más sofisticada que solo el idioma? How do you, celebrate Spanish as an American language but still get the message across that it's, Latino political outreach is about much more than just language?
Well, I think it's partly language. I've been asked a lot on the campaign trail about how well I speak Spanish, and I tell people that I think like a lot of second-generation Latinos that I understand Spanish pretty well, but that I'm not fluent at it. I can speak some, and one of the things that I tried to explain, especially to the mainstream media, was that, I grew up in Texas. And my grandmother got here in 1922, and when my grandmother got here, there were still signs on storefront windows that said, "No Mexicans or dogs allowed." And the folks who grew up in Texas or states like it will remember, and this was exactly one of the reasons that LULAC was formed in 1929, to make sure that the Latino community could have some support amongst each other, amongst families, and to push for equal rights. And one of the things that happened during that time, in my grandmother's time and my mother's time, was that Spanish was looked down upon, that you would be punished in a lot of the public schools, and even some of the Catholic schools, if you spoke Spanish in class. And so in a very real way, they were trying to beat the Spanish out of you. And maybe the saddest part of that was that in a lot of our families, people started to look down on speaking the Spanish language and wanted to teach their children English first. People here in the audience will remember those generations. And one of the things I'm proud of about our country today is that we live in a country where understanding Spanish and speaking it or another second language is celebrated. My daughter Karina goes to a bilingual program and is learning Spanish, and that's a wonderful thing. It's a marker of the progress that we've made as a nation. in terms of being a Latino candidate, I think that your ability to speak Spanish is certainly something that's important to connect with the community. It's one part of that. There are so many other things, right? There's your life experience,
Right.
Culturally. There's also where you stand on issues, right? Whether your positions on issues are going to do something for the Latino community or not.
And let's talk about some of those issues. Your proposals on immigration, sus propuestas en inmigración han sido criticadas por moderados de los dos lados, republicanos y también demócratas. El ex secretario de Seguridad Interna, Jed Johnson, dijo que esto era un llamado a fronteras abiertas y las llamó extremas y poco funcionales. The former DHS Secretary, Jed Johnson, called some of your immigration proposals extreme and unworkable. How do you react to the friendly fire?
Well, it's obviously not friendly. Right? I would say that Secretary Johnson is wrong, Vice President Biden is wrong on this, and Congressman O'Rourke is wrong on this. And let me tell you why. From the late 1920s, around the time that LULAC was formed, until about 2004, we treated crossing the border as a civil violation, not a criminal violation. So for years and years, generations, we didn't treat that as a criminal violation. And then, post 9/11, it started being treated as a crime. And after it started being treated as a crime, a lot of the problems that we're seeing today exploded. So I have called for the repeal of Section 1325 of the Immigration and Nationality Act to guarantee that a future administration cannot use that law to incarcerate a migrant parent and then separate that parent from their little child. We are not going to have that in this nation in the years to come if I'm president. I will not abide by it. I won't stand for it. We're not going to do it. Now, Secretary Johnson has suggested somehow that people will take that as open borders.
Correct.
Open borders is a right-wing talking point. We have 654 miles of fencing. We have thousands of personnel at the border. We have planes. We have helicopters. We have boats. We have guns. We have security cameras. We still have civil courts if somebody crosses the border. We have an asylum process. Folks will know, the folks that live along the border also, a lot of the folks that are coming today, they're presenting themselves at the border. They're not trying to go anywhere. They want to present themselves to our border officials. So it makes no sense to make policy based out of fear, political fear. I am not going to make policy based out of fear. I'm going to make policy to stand up for the people who need a voice right now. And we have these little children that are being separated from their parents.
Correct.
That are being kept in conditions where some of them don't have soap, they don't have toothbrushes, they're crowded into pens. They're going to be traumatized, many of them, for the rest of their lives. And I've said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to work hard to make sure that no future administration can weaponize that law in order to do what Donald Trump has done.
Rápidamente, el presidente Trump dice que las condiciones en las que están muchas de esas familias son mejores a las que tienen sus países de origen. A quick follow-up on that, President Trump says that some of the conditions these families face in detention centers are better than the ones they have in their home countries. What would you say about that?
I would say the people who are coming here from Honduras or El Salvador or Guatemala or other places are no different from the Irish who fled famine before. They're no different from people that came from Germany or Poland or Italy or folks who came from Cuba in the early 1960s. Everybody was fleeing desperate circumstances. That's the common denominator. And they have just as much to add to this country as generations of immigrants have before. Let me also just say, Enrique, I think one of the things that distinguishes what I've put forward versus some of the critics is that I'm actually talking about solving this challenge. I've said that we need to do a 21st century Marshall Plan for Central America to partner with those countries so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to come to the United States. And that's the long-term way to solve this challenge.
Tenemos tiempo para una pregunta más antes de ir a la audiencia y quiero hacerla sobre educación y Texas, porque recientemente la Universidad de Texas anunció que va a dejar de cobrar la colegiatura matrícula para familias que ganen menos de $65,000 al año. ¿Deben otras universidades seguir la idea de la Universidad de Texas? UT Austin announced last week that it's offering full tuition scholarships to in-state undergraduates whose families make $65,000 or less per year. You think other colleges should take the lead and UT's lead on this?
Yes, I've been very blessed in my life to have gone to the public schools of Texas and to have gotten a good higher education, and that's allowed me to provide for my family and to have the career success that I've had. I want to make sure that that kind of opportunity is available to everybody. And one of the things that we need to do is to get tuition-free public state universities, community colleges, and job training and certification programs. And there are people in this room and people that are watching that will remember that it wasn't very long ago that the University of Texas system was almost tuition-free, and the University of California system, until the late 1970s or early 80s, actually was tuition-free. And a whole bunch of other state university systems just a generation or two ago were tuition-free. Today, it's more imperative than ever that we actually make that investment because, as y'all know, jobs require more knowledge and more skill than ever before. That means that our kids out there, they need to get that higher education. It's not always a four-year degree or even a community college degree. Sometimes it's job training or certification program, but they need something beyond high school so that they can get gainful employment, and that's why we need to make that investment. I like what UT Austin is doing, but I would take that even further to make sure that higher education is accessible to everybody.
Thank you so much, Secretary Castro. Gracias, Secretario Castro. Le voy a pedir a nuestro compañero David Cruz de LULAC que nos ayude con las preguntas del público. Adelante, David.
Thank you very much, Enrique. Now it is time for us to hear from the family of LULAC, and we have questions that have been sent in by members from all over America. From those, we have screened them, and you have some of those guests tonight who will be asking you, Mr. Secretary, some of these same questions. I'd like to first invite up here Joel Taubada. He is from the Cicero, Illinois area. He is a Green Card veteran. He also is a Bronze Star recipient. With him is Carlos Luna, who is holding a helmet in hand. And we now have in the audience two lines of veterans who are standing here before you. Sir, what is the significance of the helmet and the standing men and women here?
Ladies and gentlemen, this war-torn helmet here is here to symbolize our brothers and sisters who have protected our country even when our country hasn't protected them. Our members here from Green Card veterans that are standing here before us at attention are standing in solidarity with our deported brothers and sisters who have been deported and showing that we are ready to do whatever it takes to help get them back.
So the question is, Mr. Secretary, will you commit upon your election to be the president to have those individuals who have served this country bravely be repatriated from their exile? What is your answer to that?
Yes, I will. First of all, thank you very much for your service to each and every one of you who stepped up out of your patriotism and served our country very honorably. We appreciate your service, the sacrifice that you and your family have made for our country. And also appreciate the voice that you're using on behalf of the veterans who have been deported, which is shameful. In the immigration plan, my People First immigration plan that I released on April 2nd, one of the things I call for is to immediately ensure that veterans who have been deported can come back into the United States and pursue citizenship here in the United States because they served our country honorably. They did their duty for our country, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. And the last thing that we should do is see them deported away from their family and unable to enjoy the fruits of their labor in defending this country.
Thank you. Our next question is from Isabel Ramirez. She is a LULAC member from Orland Park, Illinois, and she is here to ask this question. Would you please direct it to the state?
There is a teacher shortage that is growing nationwide, especially in poverty areas. What is your plan to improve the unequal distribution of highly qualified teachers and, more important, help motivate individuals to seek a career in education?
Thank you very much for the question. And, gracias, thank you to all of the teachers who are in our audience and those who are watching. I know we have a lot that are part of LULAC. Yeah, my father was a teacher, public school teacher for 31 years, and my wife has been a public school educator for the last 15 years. My brother and I are proud products of the public schools, and so I know the value of great teachers in our country. I released an education plan a few weeks ago, and one of the things I called for is to increase teacher pay, and we would do that in part through a tax credit that would range from $2,000 to $10,000 and would get higher on a sliding scale based on the percentage of students who are on free or reduced lunch. In other words, we would incentivize teachers to go into those areas that are the most impoverished, oftentimes most struggling schools in our country, and to pursue their careers there. We also would ensure that we get more teachers into the pipeline by investing in tuition-free public state universities, community colleges, and job training programs, and invest more money in teacher recruitment and retention. Because as you know, we get a lot of great people that go into the teaching profession, but then after 1 or 2 years, they leave. They get frustrated, or they're not sure if it's for them, and that's especially true in some of the toughest school districts in the United States. I would invest in teacher recruitment and training to help them succeed professionally and be able to stay and do a good job in those schools that they're in. And I have to tell you that part of my experience and part of why I've proposed that is that after college and before law school, I went back to my old high school, Thomas Jefferson High School in San Antonio, Texas, and I was a permanent substitute teacher. I remember I had one class that I think had 37 people in it, one class had 38, and the other one had 39. And I knew right away that I knew very little about how to teach effectively. And I gained a tremendous amount of respect for what it takes to be a good teacher. I knew that it's not as simple as just walking into the classroom and talking, that it's a craft. It takes skill, it takes patience, it takes understanding. Oftentimes, you're not only a teacher, you turn into a counselor, right? So we need to invest in those teachers at the beginning to recruit them and then to retain them and to pay them what they deserve.
Thank you very much. Our next question. Thank you. Our next question comes from Deborah Andraka. She is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Deborah has this question for you, please.
Hello, and as a teacher, thank you very much for all of your comments. If elected, what will you do to reduce gun violence, and how do you plan to accomplish this working with Republicans in Congress?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you very much for the question, and even more so for your activism and the activism of Mom's Demand. Y'all have inspired so many people across the country, as the Parkland students have as well. I believe in several things. First of all, common sense gun reform, that we need to get universal background checks. We need to limit the capacity of magazines. We need a renewed assault weapons ban. We also should pass red flag laws so that we're able to stop folks from getting a gun who should never get it in the first place. Close loopholes like the boyfriend loophole and the Charleston loophole. And I believe also ensure that we do things like end this distinction between physical health care and mental health care, so that we invest in mental health care in our country, so that, because as you know, one of the things that we talk about less is the fact that a lot of people who die because of especially a handgun, die by suicide. Too many people suffer in silence with bipolar disorder or depression or something else that they spiral downward in silence until they take their own life. We have a role in connecting these dots with our healthcare system to make sure that we're investing in coverage for mental health care in a productive way and eliminating the stigma that too often times goes with mental health issues. And by doing that, I believe that's also going to have a positive impact on reducing gun violence when it comes to death by suicide. I think we can also do things like smart targeted gun buybacks in different communities. So across the board, we can make our country safer.
Thank you very much. We have 1 minute left. May we inject one more question from Mary Perillo. She is from Wisconsin. Please, your question.
Thank you. What do you propose to do about the student loan borrowers who are still struggling to pay off the loans? I've heard there are student loan forgiveness plans, but want to know how the program you would initiate would work. For example, if you were proposing paying 75% of the loans, would the unsubsidized portions be paid off first? And with the remaining 25% left to pay, would the income-based repayment plan still be available to apply to it?
And I apologize, we have very little time, but please, if you could help us with it.
Okay, just very briefly.
Lightning round.
I hope that folks will go to my website, juliancastro.com, and check out my education plan that includes student loan debt relief. Student loan debt is a huge problem in our country, and it saddles folks with too much debt that prevents them from buying a home, starting a family. My plan addresses that. The way that it works, just briefly, is that if you make less than 250% of federal poverty level, then the repayment is zero. If you make over that, then it scales up, but the most that you would have to repay would be 10% of your income, and the total amount that you would have to pay would be capped. Interest would be capped as well. And so I invite folks to go to juliancastro.com and to check out my full plan.
Thank you. Un aplauso.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Secretary Castro. In 1 year, en un año, aquí en Milwaukee vamos a tener la Convención Nacional Demócrata, justamente en un año. ¿Se ve usted en esa convención aceptando la nominación del partido? In 1 year, we're going to have we're going to have the National Convention, the Democratic National Convention here in Milwaukee. You see yourself as the candidate for the party receiving that nomination here in a year?
Yes, I do.
You have 2 minutes to make your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much, Enrique, for having me here. Gracias a LULAC. Thank you very much. And to all of my fellow Texans also, I know we have a large Texas contingent. Thank you for being here. Just briefly, look, this election is all about what we want our nation to become in the years ahead. And I want you to know that if you elect me president, that I will work hard every single day to make sure that your children and your grandchildren can get a good education because they have a strong partner in Washington that will work hard with states and with local school districts to make sure that education works for everybody in this country. I'll work hard to ensure that you and your family can have good health care when you need it, that we have universal health care so that no matter how much money you make or don't make, where you live or what your background is, you can get health care and medication that you need when you need it. And that you can have good job opportunities, whether you live in a big city or a small town, so that you can get gainful employment and provide for your family, and that no matter what the color of your skin is, what your sexual orientation is, how you identify, whether you're a man or a woman, that you can reach your dreams in this country. My grandmother came here when she was 7 years old from Mexico, and worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter because she never even finished elementary school. My mom raised my brother and me as a single parent. And just 2 generations after my grandmother got here with almost nothing, one of her grandsons is now the congressman for the city that she came to, San Antonio, and the other one is here asking for your support to be president of the United States. That is the greatness of the United States of America, and I ask for your support in the year ahead. And with your support, on January 20th, 2021, we're going to say adios to Donald Trump. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias, Secretario Castro. Siempre un placer. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Regresamos a nuestra transmisión. David Cruz.
Thank you.
Gracias. Wow.
Thank you.
Qué aplauso.
Gracias.
Qué aplauso esta noche. Okay, let's take an instant poll. Let me ask the former national president of LULAC, will you please stand, sir? Hector Flores, I want your reaction. Did he convince you? Do you think that he has a solid response to the questions he was asked?
Absolutely. He not only has my vote, but he's got my money.
All right, let me get reaction over here. Would you please stand? May I ask you a question? What did you think about what you heard from Secretary Julian Castro?
I felt that it was very genuine, and I think it's a great opportunity, not just for the community, but for all of those who are willing to put in hard work and to see immigration reform and really move this country, continue to move it forward.
But let me ask you this. Do you think that he has that temperament to take on someone like Donald Trump, who attacks very personally and very aggressively?
I think so.
Thank you very much. Let's move over here. You asked a tough question. You asked about repatriating men and women who have been deported after serving this country. Is that a broken promise in your view? A promise made to these people who came here and served in uniform?
Definitely. This promise was made when these service members were enlisted in the military. They served their country. A lot of them gave blood for their country.
So did he answer your question?
He did, but there's always more that we can do to get these guys back sooner.
There you go. Thank you very kindly. And you're a young man sitting over here. I've got about 40 seconds left. As you listen to that man, could you see yourself one day doing what he is doing today, seeking public office?
Absolutely. I would run for Congress the minute I got the chance to, at the age of 25.
You should see the sparkle in this guy's eyes. Okay, well, we thank you all for this reaction. You're very happy over here, and you're dressed very smartly. We've got a few seconds left. Where are you from, please, young man?
I'm from Oxnard, California.
So there you are from Strawberry Country, the central coast of California. Tell us a little bit about that community. Do you think Julian Castro could connect with them?
Definitely, absolutely.
Now, as you hear the candidates tonight, what's important to you when you're listening to their answers?
Everything he says is very important to me, from people from the military and how families are being separated. That really catches my attention. And
I thank you very kindly. Un aplauso. You guys are doing wonderful. Thank you. We continue with Elizabeth Warren. Gracias, Enrique.
Estamos de regreso en esta transmisión de Frente al Voto desde Milwaukee, en Wisconsin, en este foro extraordinario en el Centro de Convenciones con una audiencia realmente increíble. Ya tuvimos la primera entrevista, la primera conversación de la noche con el secretario Julian Castro, quien habló de varios temas. Yo, en lo que regresamos a nuestro programa, ya tenemos a la senadora Elizabeth Warren lista para salir al escenario. Les quiero preguntar sobre las prioridades. Tenemos una serie de encuestas que muestran cuáles son las prioridades entre el voto hispano, que por cierto, 2/3 partes de este voto hispano es nacido en los Estados Unidos. Por primera vez en 2020 se da esta cifra. Así que en las encuestas que hemos hecho, una de las prioridades es, por ejemplo, el tema de los servicios de salud. Después vienen asuntos como educación, como empleos y economía. Pero vamos a hacer rápidamente un ejercicio aquí. ¿Para quién es una prioridad en la elección de 2020? La prioridad número 1, el tema de inmigración. Economía y empleos. Temas de seguridad nacional, por ejemplo. Asuntos de educación, como el que tratamos con el secretario Castro. Perfecto. Bueno, de esto y más vamos a hablar con las senadoras Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is here to join us on stage. Please, ma'am, welcome to LULAC and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello. It's good to see you. So,
2 minutes, if you like, to start out.
So thank you. Let me start by saying thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And there's a whole range of issues that I know are important to the Latinx community, from education to housing to entrepreneurship, and I hope we get to talk about all of them. But I want to say a little bit at the top about my immigration plan, if I can. It starts with a basic premise, and that is immigration is good for the United States of America. It helps us build a strong economy, and it ties us to families and people all around the world. Now, our immigration system is broken, and I get that Donald Trump goes out there every single day and tries to exploit that for his political ends. But we all know in this room it was broken long before Donald Trump came along. And we need big change in the immigration system. We need the kind of change that helps us build a stronger future. That's about, is that better?
Yes,
that's about our security, that is about building a future that promotes our economy, and that also is about living our values every day. So let me just give you the highlights. You know me, when I do my plans, there are lots and lots of details. It's who I am. But let me give you the highlights. It starts with expanding legal immigration. Families have been held apart for too long. We have a backlog that now runs years. That makes no sense for the United States of America. Part 2 is a path to citizenship for everyone who is here to stay. It's for dreamers and for grandmas and for brothers and for sisters. It's for our neighbors. It's for people who've started businesses. It's for people who work farms. It's for people who have been here for years and who are part of our great American family. And that path to citizenship has to be both fair and achievable. Part 3 to this plan is to say we have got to stop the crisis at the border. I will stop the crisis at the border.
And if you like, we can talk a little bit more about that in detail.
Can I just do one more on
Sure.
No great nation tears families apart. No great nation locks up children. And that's critical. And then the fourth part is just to say quickly, we need to provide more aid around the world, and particularly in Central America. Help establish the rule of law, make a little investment in the economy, and not so many people will feel that they need to run for their lives. We should be a country that builds a future here in America and encourages others to do it all around the world. So thank you for having me here.
Sorry to interrupt.
Not at
Perdón
all.
por interrumpir la senadora. I'm going to ask the question first in Spanish, and then I'll jump right into English. Quiero empezar con esta noticia sobre la decisión del presidente Trump de abandonar la batalla legal en las cortes para incluir la pregunta de ciudadanía en el censo. I want to start out by asking you about this breaking news. President Trump decided today to withdraw his court challenge to include the citizenship question in the census. What's your reaction to that?
Wow, he's going to follow the law?
He said he's going to seek other ways to get this information, right?
This is not about trying to find out real information about citizenship and non-citizenship in America. This is just about trying to stir up some more hate, to try to get more people excited. Donald Trump has one big message to the American people. If there's something wrong in your life, if there's something that's not working, blame them. Blame people who don't look like you. Blame people who don't sound like you. Blame people who don't pray like you. Blame people who weren't born where you were born. Well, he wants to build an America that pits working people against hardworking people. That is not how we build a future in this country. We build a future together. That's how we make a stronger America.
Pero el presidente Trump tiene, a veces nos concentramos mucho en Trump y poco en el trumpismo, en el movimiento, y él tiene muchos seguidores. Si usted llega a ser presidente, ¿cómo se va a asegurar que esa gente, que los que siguen a Trump, no se sientan tan abandonados como muchos demócratas se sienten en su administración? He has millions of followers. We focus sometimes too much on Trump and not enough on Trumpism. If you become president, how are you going to make sure that those followers don't feel disenfranchised by your administration, as many Democrats feel under Trump?
So here's how I see this. The question in 2020 is who government should work for. This is not a problem, again, it just started with Trump. We've gone for a long time where America has worked better and better and better for a thinner and thinner and thinner slice at the top. And it's just not working well for anyone else. We live in an America that works great for giant drug companies, just not for people trying to get a prescription filled. It works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for those of us who are worried about climate change bearing down upon us. It works great for corporate executives, for billionaires, but it's not working for the rest of us. So here's how I see this. We have a chance in 2020, in a democracy, to take this back and make this government work for all of us. We can attack the corruption of a government in Washington that only works for those with money. We can attack it head on, and we can make this government work, not just for those at the top, but for everyone. We can help restructure this economy. We can strengthen unions so working people have a real voice in this economy. Yes. We can put a wealth tax in place. Tax 2 cents on the top 1/10 of 1%. And you know what we could do with that? We could provide universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5 in this country. Think about that. Universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old. Raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher to the professional levels they deserve. Tuition-free technical school, community college, and 4-year college for every one of our kids who wants to get an education. $50 billion into historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions. Level that playing field. And cancel student loan debt for 95% of the kids who've got it. That's how we build a future for everyone, Democrat and Republican.
And talking about the playing field, vamos a hablar de fútbol, soccer con la senadora Warren. Let's talk about soccer. And I want to get your thoughts on some of the backlash against the U.S. Women's soccer team after they came back with their 4th World Cup. What do you think about that?
You know, I just love seeing the women win at soccer. Come on, guys, this is fun. Wow. So I have to say, both my kids played soccer, and my husband, bless him, did not play soccer, but he became a soccer coach, because that's what good daddies do, right? As he used to say when he first started out, he'd say, you know, he had played, he was a very good tennis player, you know, very driven, and that's the kind of person he is. And he said, coaching little girls at soccer, it's kind of a different world. You're totally into running drills, and then someone says, a butterfly. And he said, but over time, I truly believe, I watched them as he coached and as our daughter grew up and then our son. I think soccer made both our children and my husband better people. So I'm in all the way.
But I mean, their demand for equal pay, it's really about much more than that, right?
It's about a chance. This is a women's team that gets out there every day and produces. And when women produce, then by golly, women ought to be paid for it. Come on.
I think they agree. Creo que está de acuerdo la gente. Me gustaría preguntarle sobre el medio ambiente porque mencionó el tema de la emergencia climática. Hemos tenido uno de los meses, el mes de junio, que acaba de terminar más calientes en la historia. We just had another record-breaking month in terms of heat in June. We talk about a climate emergency, but we're not getting any leadership from this administration. No tenemos ningún tipo de liderazgo de esta administración que niega la existencia del cambio climático. What would you do if you become president in the first 100 days of the administration?
I think we are getting leadership from this administration. They're just leading us in the wrong direction. And it's important to turn this around. This is a crisis. This is the one that threatens our very existence on this planet. So I see this as a two-part. One is you do everything you can do that a president can do, I love saying this, by herself.
Ella misma, ella sola.
And it just, for example, on the first day, I will put in place a moratorium. So there will be no new drilling, no new mining on any federal lands, and no offshore drilling. And that moves us in the right direction. Rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. We'll move in that direction. But I also have a bigger bill. And this is a green manufacturing bill. Let me do this in as short a view as I can. Think of it this way. As we move forward, the United States, we could get to net zero emissions by 2030. It's an ambitious goal, but we could do it. That'll only solve 20% of the problem. We have a worldwide problem when we're talking about climate. So think of it this way. There is an upcoming $23 trillion worldwide market for green. Green energy, green products, products that help clean the air, products that help clean the water. A lot of these products haven't been invented yet. So here's my plan. First, we do what we do really well in the United States, and that is we invest heavily, 10 times more, in research and development, in creating all those new ways to do things, all those new products. Part two, we say to anybody who wants to develop them and turn them into a product they can sell, you can do it. You just have to build it here in the United States. American taxpayers pay for it, you build it and create those jobs here in the US. And then third, we need to increase our marketing and sales of these products all around the world. China outspends us right now 100 to 1 on marketing their products around the world. We need to do that. That will produce about 1.2 million new manufacturing jobs right here in the US. This is a way to create a future, to build allies, and to protect this planet and create a green, sustainable planet for all of us going forward.
Thank you, Senator Warren. To open questions to the floor. Prometí que iba a ser breve para poder escuchar las preguntas de la audiencia. David Cruz, adelante, por favor.
Thank you and welcome, Senator. I want to ask the first question, which has to do with criminal justice. We invite Richard Bettis Sr. from Hollister, California, to ask that question.
Bienvenidos, Senator Warren. Given the current conditions of the criminal justice system, what steps do you plan to take to prevent miscarriages of justice as recently reported, specifically the one regarding Mr. Epstein and Secretary Acosta?
Oh, thank you. So I'm kind of guessing from that question that you actually believe in accountability. Here's the problem we've got in America. We have two justice systems. One for people who are rich and can hire lawyers and lobbyists and have lots of connections and friends, and one for everybody else. But the words engraved over the Supreme Court of the United States are equal justice under law. And that's what we have to abide by. So let me just say this about it. That is, we need to reform our criminal justice system from the front end, what we declare illegal, all the way through the justice system itself, where Mr. Epstein got a pass that I didn't know was available to people, on through incarceration, and at the end, helping people re-enter our communities when they've served their time. I have plans in every part of this, but I'll mention a couple. There are so many places in here where race intersects the notion of justice, and that people of color are simply treated differently from white people. And let me give you some examples. We know, for example, from the data that African Americans and whites, on exactly the same crimes, African Americans are more likely to be arrested, to be detained, to be taken to trial, to be convicted, and to have harsher sentences. That is a criminal justice system that is broken. And it is for all of us in America to live our values. And that means we need public defenders, we need to change the cash bail system, we need to get rid of for-profit prisons. No one should make money by locking people up.
Senator, thank you. Senator Warren, the next question is, yes.
Just a quick follow-up. because it's relevant to the question, un pequeño seguimiento porque es relevante a la pregunta. Are you also supporting Senator Schumer on this demand that Secretary Acosta resigns?
Oh, yes. But I was there a long time ago with him. Yes.
David, adelante.
Thank you.
Let me count the ways. Okay.
So, Senator Warren, the next question deals with Puerto Rico. This was sent in by Juan Carlos Lizardi. He is from Mott Haven, New York. Sir, your question.
Thank you. Senator, as president, you will have the courage to support the equality rights and statehood for the American citizens of Puerto Rico?
I will support what the Puerto Rican people want. If the Puerto Rican people vote for statehood, count me in.
Senator, to that point, if I may add to his question, the victims of the worst hurricane to ever strike the island were thrown some paper towels way back when. 23 months later, they were still waiting for help. To what do you attribute the fact that they had to wait nearly 2 years to get aid that also would have been dispensed quite differently in other parts of America?
I think this is part of Donald Trump's same plan, to say people who don't look like you, people who don't sound like you, people who don't worship like you, people who aren't born where you were born, everything is their fault, treat them differently. He treats them as if they are not part of our country, and they are part of our country. People from Puerto Rico serve in the military at higher rates than most other places in this country. I have 3 brothers who are veterans. We honor the service of those in Puerto Rico. Hardworking people who deserve more respect than they have been given by this president.
Does that mean that you would commit, when you're elected to become president of the United States, to immediately provide the promised relief that they were given and never delivered upon?
Yes.
Thank you. The next question, Senator Warren, is on immigration and specifically mixed status marriages. Let me please invite Damaris Posadas. She is from Chicago, Illinois. She's a member of LULAC, and here's the question that she has to offer. That's okay. Just go ahead and take the card.
Hello.
Hi.
My question for you, and this is coming from someone who is also from a mixed status family. So I have a little sister who is a U.S. citizen. I'm a current DACA recipient, but my DACA has been delayed, and my mom is also here illegally. So, will you support the Right to Family campaign? The national movement to create a 3-year renewable and retroactive visa program for parents and spouses of U.S. citizens and parents and spouses of Dreamers. We need a candidate that will advocate for all of our mixed status families that are separated every day by mass deportations. And I would also like to add that the borders are no longer just down south. The borders are in our communities, in our homes, and they're willing to come in and separate us. We have a bill. Are you willing to support it, or do you have a better bill?
So I think I actually have a better bill. But I want you to understand about this bill. It was written in part by spending a lot of time with mixed status families. And that's how I came to the understanding that I understand why we want to protect our dreamers. I'm all for protecting our dreamers, but not just our dreamers. What does it mean to protect a dreamer if her mother is taken away, if her father is taken away, if an older sibling is taken away, if a younger sibling has missed the time cutoff? That's not who we are. We are about families that stay together. That's what makes families stronger, but it's also what makes our country stronger.
Senator, we have a question on a very important topic to millions of Latinos across America, and that is mental health, and making sure that that is included in our health coverage. We have a question here submitted by Melissa Vermillion. She is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If I could please ask her to come forward. Here's her question for you tonight.
Hello.
Hi,
So,
Melissa.
given suicide rates have increased for the current youth population, what is your plan to ensure insurances start providing real mental health services to the youth population, especially for minority youth?
So I'm so glad you raised this issue. I just want everybody in here to think about what's happened with mental health in this country. You go to an emergency room and say, I think I've broken my leg. They find a way to treat you. but come in with a mental health problem, and they say, come back in 3 weeks. They say, I'm sorry, you only get this many treatments, whether it's what you need or not. Now, I want to be clear on this part. The law says that mental health must be treated the same as physical health. That means coverage is supposed to, under the law, be the same. But this is one more example of where our government isn't on our side. They're not fighting the insurance companies over this, they just bow to the insurance companies. So here's my promise to you. Mental health issues matter to me, and I have the courage to take on insurance companies all across this country and make sure that they provide equal coverage and that this government provides equal coverage.
Thank you, Senator. I want to ask you about education. The question submitted by our member, Alejandra Arredondo in Harbor City, California, is this. What are you going to do for the low-income communities and the children of color who are struggling with schools that need school supplies and also accommodate schools that don't have the things to teach the kids with the tools that they need?
Good. So let me go back to where I started a few minutes ago, and that is to talk about a wealth tax in this country. I want to underline this for everyone. This is a tax on the 1/10 of 1%, the greatest fortunes in this country. It's about 75,000 fortunes. It says your first 50 million free and clear. I see some of you relaxed with that. But on your 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents. And 2 cents for every dollar after that. That produces enough money to start making real investments in our kids. I started with universal childcare, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old, raising the wages of preschool teachers and childcare workers. But it also carries through what we need to be doing in K through 12. I have supported, while I've been in the Senate, more investment in our schools and making sure those schools, that money goes to the schools that need it most and have the children that need it most. You know, this is about money. It's about numbers. I'm a numbers nerd. I admit it. But here's the deal. It's really about our values. Is it more important to leave 2 cents on the dollar with the bazillionaires? Or is it to say, you made it big, good for you, we're glad you made it big, but pitch in 2 cents so every other kid in this country has a chance.
We have very few seconds, but I want to ask you this. Do you support the privatization of public education? The privatization of public education, what's your position on that?
No.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Thank you.
Senator Warren, Senadora Warren, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Thank you for coming here. You have 2 minutes for your closing statements.
Oh, good.
Before we leave. 2 minutos para sus conclusiones.
So let me just say one more word. It is a great honor to be here with all of you. I grew up in a family that was a paycheck-to-paycheck family and sometimes didn't have a paycheck. As I mentioned earlier, all 3 of my older brothers went off and joined the military. I had a different dream. From the time I was in 2nd grade, I've known what I wanted to do, and I've never varied from it. I wanted to be a public school teacher. And that was my dream. By the time I graduated from high school, my daddy was working as a janitor. We didn't have money for me to apply to college, much less 4 years of college. I have a twisty-turny story on how it all happened. But ultimately, I ended up at the University of Houston, which back then was go Cougs! Was a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. And for a price I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got my 4-year diploma and I became a special needs teacher. I've lived my dream job. I'm somebody who's lived opportunity. And that opportunity came from the fact that other people around this country made an investment to make that education available to me. I am grateful down to my toes. And the reason I'm running for President of the United States is out of gratitude. I want us to be an America that doesn't just work for those at the top. I want us to be an America that fulfills that dream of opportunity and says to every single kid, you get out there, you work hard, and the sky's the limit. Look, here I am. My daddy ended up as a janitor, but I got the opportunity to be a public school teacher, to be a college professor, to be a United States Senator, and now to be a candidate for President of the United States. Dream big, fight hard. That's how we win.
Thank you so much, Senator Warren. Thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Gracias, Senator Warren.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Vamos a regresar con David Cruz.
Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias, gracias. All right, now we take a straw poll. This is an opportunity to get your reaction. May I invite you over? So, we've heard 2 of the 4 candidates tonight. I'm at random picking people out of the audience. May I have your name, please?
Margaret Stewart.
Now, Margaret, where are you from, please?
Oh, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So you're right here in your hometown. You've heard Elizabeth Warren speak with so much passion. She says, I have a plan for everything. But tonight, she wasn't going too much into the weeds. She was sticking to the key points. How did she do with you?
I felt like she was being really honest and open with us tonight, and I think that it's up to us as voters to really dig deep into what her thoughts are and get that information from other sources. I mean, we only get a snippet today, but it's up to us ultimately to figure out where she really, what impact she can really make.
I thank you so very much, and thank you for having us in your hometown. I want to invite Teresa Montaño from the state of California. She is one of the academic leaders in that state, so you heard her response, very simple, very clear, on the issue of privatization of public education. Was she convincing with you?
I wish she was convincing, but I wish she would have had more time to actually talk about the dangers of privatization. But anyone who was a public school teacher and then a college professor and now a candidate who has supported public education for all her career, I believe will take on privatization.
Everyone in this room seems to feel that education is one of the top priorities. You've spent your life in education, and yet we're still struggling with some of the achievement gaps in some districts around America. Your reaction to that?
My reaction is that for us, especially for those of us in the Latinx community, education remains a top priority. We know that it's important. We know that it's a way out of poverty. We know that it's important to our children. We know how to do it. We just need the resources to improve it.
I want to thank you so very much, and I want to thank the entire audience. You guys gave a rousing reception to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Y continuamos. Thank you.
Estamos de regreso de frente al voto aquí en Milwaukee, Wisconsin, en este foro con los precandidatos del Partido Demócrata a la presidencia. Estamos ya a la mitad de nuestro programa. Platicamos con el secretario Julian Castro, con la senadora Elizabeth Warren, y ahora nos acompaña en el escenario el senador Bernie Sanders. Senator Bernie Sanders, welcome. It's good to see you, sir. Please. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
You have 2 minutes for your introduction round. Please go ahead.
Well, let me thank LULAC. Let me thank LULAC and Domingo and all of you for doing the incredibly important work you are doing at this unprecedented and dangerous moment in American history. It gives me no pleasure to tell you what you already know, and that is, tragically, we have a president who today is a racist, who is a bigot, who is a xenophobe, who is an embarrassment to everything this country stands for. My father, his name was Eli, came to this country from Poland at the age of 17. And he came to this country with very little education, without a nickel in his pocket, and could not speak one word of English. He is exactly the kind of person that Donald Trump does not want coming into the United States. And we know that Trump is doing something unprecedented as a president. And that is, in order to win votes, he is appealing to the most base instincts of people. He is trying to divide this country up based on the color of our skin or where we came from or our religion or our sexual orientation. And the reason that Trump is going to lose the coming election is because we are going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to bring the American people together, black and white and Latino, Asian American, Native American. We are going to bring our people together around an agenda that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. So not only are we going to end bigotry in this country, we're going to move forward to provide health care to all people as a right. We're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We are going to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child.
And let's start talking about the details, Senator Sanders.
Right.
It's good to see you again. I think we spoke only 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
Bueno verlo de nuevo. Hablamos hace 2 semanas. Muchos de los temas, I'm going to ask the question in Spanish, and then I'll do...
Try to understand some of it in Spanish.
I speak very fast, but I know you can understand part of it. Muchos de los temas en esta campaña en 2019, pre-campaña, fueron introducidos por usted en 2016. ¿Cómo piensa retomar el crédito por estos asuntos, por esta agenda progresista? Many of the issues that we're talking about in the campaign trail today were introduced by yourself in 2016. Do you feel responsible for moving the party to the left? And how are you going to regain ownership on some of this progressive agenda?
Well, I feel proud. Because all that we are doing is doing what the American people want us to do. The American people want an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. The American people know that we are the only major country on earth. I'm supposed to look at you, right?
But well, you can, right. That's fine.
It's what politicians
They are more interesting than I am.
All right. Look, every other major country on earth guarantees health care to all people as a right. We have got to do the same. We have too many young people in this country who come from families like the family I came from that doesn't have a lot of money. They can't afford to go to college. Therefore, we are losing their ability, their potential to be teachers and doctors and scientists. That is why we have got to make sure that all of our young people have the opportunity for a higher education. Other countries are doing it. It's not a radical idea. Making public colleges and universities tuition-free is exactly what we should be doing. And I'll tell you what else we should be doing. Instead of giving $1.5 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% and large corporations, we should cancel student debt in this country.
And these are some of the issues that we're going to talk about.
You want to sit?
I'll just chase you around the stage. That's fine. Yo lo persigo por donde vaya, senador. Bueno, ya que estamos de pie, hablarle del tema de la edad en la campaña, porque este fue un asunto en el primer debate. Muchos de los candidatos le pidieron a otros más experimentados, como el vicepresidente Biden y usted, que pasaran la antorcha a una nueva generación. ¿Qué opina de este cambio generacional? Age became an issue after the first debate.
What did you say?
You've called it ageism in the Democratic Party. Some of the younger candidates asked to pass the torch. How do you view this generational change in the Democratic Party?
I think we need...
Yo me siento, you can keep it.
I think we need a lot of change in this country, to tell you the truth. But when you look at a candidate, age is a factor. Experience is a factor. The candidate's record is a factor. Most importantly, what that candidate stands for is a factor. And I would simply say, and I say this as honestly as I can, knowing, all the other candidates, good people all, is that if you look at my record, there are very few, if any, candidates out there who have spent as much time and effort with success in standing up for the working people of this country. And when we talk about age, and you also have to talk about vision. Where do we want to go as a nation? Where do we want our future to be for our kids? So let me be very clear. And I know not everybody agrees with me. I get criticized every day. But I don't believe that America is about 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of the country. I don't believe that it is about giving massive tax breaks to people who don't need it when we have 500,000 people who will be sleeping out on the streets of this country today. We need to build affordable housing so that people do not pay 40, 50% of their limited incomes in housing. We need, instead of having a president who denies the reality of climate change, we need a president who will lead the world in transforming our energy system and moving away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. This is an incredible threat, not just to the United States, not just to Latin America, but to Africa, to Asia, to Europe. You all are reading about the heat waves in Europe and India. People are dying right now. And what the scientists tell us, if we do not act aggressively in transforming our energy system within 12 years, which is no time at all, the damage done to this planet will be irreparable. Here is my vision. This is a radical idea. I don't know if it will ever happen. But this is my dream and what I will do as a president. What I will do is go to Russia and China and Brazil and India and all the countries around the world and tell them that instead of spending $1.5 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill other human beings, maybe we should use our resources to come together and fight our common enemy, which is climate change.
En la última encuesta de Noticias Univisión, la reducción de los costos de salud fue nombrada como la prioridad número 1. Quite a welcoming. Fue nombrada como la prioridad número 1 entre los votantes hispanos. Le quiero preguntar al senador Sanders cómo piensa no solamente pagar por esto, sino convencer a los republicanos en el Congreso de esta idea de reformar el sistema de salud. Lowering the cost of healthcare was cited as the #1 priority for Latino voters in a most recent poll. I want to ask you not just how you're going to plan to pay for this, because I know you've been asked that question 1,000 times, but how are you going to convince Republicans in Congress to support this idea after the kind of hyper-polarization, hyper-partisanship that we've seen from Washington?
We're going to make the Republicans an offer they can't refuse. First of all, my sincere hope is that we're going to get rid of Republican control of the United States Senate. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to make that happen. But second of all, if that is not successful, and it's, by the way, not just Republicans, we've got some Democrats we've got to worry about as well, to be honest with you. Look, as a nation, we have to answer 2 questions. And people disagree. The first question is, do we believe that health care is a human right which should be enjoyed by all people, whether they are rich or poor? Okay. I think most Americans believe that. And the second question is, okay, if we believe that, if we think that it is absurd that in America today we have 34 million people who have no health insurance, we have even more who are underinsured, and that hits the Latino community particularly hard, okay? If we are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country, if we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, if the function of the current healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all, but to make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies, the answer to me is that we need to move toward Medicare for all single-payer program. And the way we do that is the way that real change, the way we bring that about is the way real change always takes place. Anybody who's understood history understands that in America or any other country on earth, the only way that change takes place is from the bottom on up, never from the top on down. All right? And what that means is that millions of people have got to stand up to the drug companies and the insurance companies and anybody in Congress and say, sorry, I am a human being. My children are human beings, and as human beings, we are entitled to health care as a right. Now, you want to ask how we're going to pay for it? The answer is we are already paying for it. We are spending twice as much per capita on health care as do the people of any other nation. You're paying for it through your premiums, through your out-of-pocket expenses, through your outrageous deductibles and co-payments and high-cost prescription drugs. We can lower the cost of health care substantially for the vast majority of the people through public funding of a Medicare for all single-payer system.
I want to open the floor to questions and say that to interview Bernie Sanders is actually a workout. Adelante, David Cruz.
Senator Sanders, thank you so very much. And in the interest of so many questions that have been submitted, I would respectfully request brevity in the answers, if I might.
Yes.
Please, the first one comes from Fernando Rubio on behalf of Reggie Gonzalez from Chicago, Illinois. Sir, the question for the senator.
Good evening. Do you favor the abolishment of the Electoral College?
It is hard to defend a system in which we have a president who lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. So the answer is yes.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for the brevity. Now, this question comes from Mr. Joe Perales, who is from Dallas, Texas.
Senator Sanders, I'm a math teacher, and I love polling data. Whether it's good or bad, I love polling data. Based on some recent polling, that based on Democrat voters, more than half of them prefer to keep their private health insurance. Even though Medicare for all, if Medicare for all was an option, would you give them that choice?
Nope. Look, let's understand. Thank you for the question. I'm going to try to be brief, but it's hard. All right. The American people do not love their health insurance companies. In fact, in many cases, they detest their health insurance companies. All right, because they know the function of the health insurance company is just to make money, to deny claims that they should, in fact, receive. What the American people do love, in many cases, are their doctors and their hospitals and their nurses. Under Medicare for all, people will have absolute freedom of choice regarding doctors and hospitals, a choice that many people do not have today, because if your doctor is not in your network, you're going to have to pay out of pocket. We eliminate that and provide freedom of choice. When the proper question is asked, and people understand they can go to any doctor they want, the overwhelming majority of the people are prepared to get rid of private health insurance. Look, here's the bottom line. Last year, the top 10 drug companies made $69 billion in profits. The top 5 insurance companies made $23 billion in profits. The function of healthcare should not be to make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies.
Thank you, Senator. The next question comes from Linda Chavez from Austin, Texas, and we have a question that's been submitted now by Joel Leahy, who is going to handle that question for you.
So since LULAC is all about education and civil rights, where are you on free education and student loan debt for relief?
Well,
thank you.
As somebody who introduced a few years ago the concept of making public colleges and universities tuition-free, I am proud of the success that we are already having throughout the country. The University of Texas today just announced that they're going to have free tuition at the Austin campus, in California and San Francisco, free tuition at their community college, New York State making progress. New York University Medical School announced a few months ago free tuition for medical students. So we are making progress, but the bottom line is, you know and I know that if our kids are going to make it into the middle class, they need a higher education. And it's not just college. It is the kind of job training they will need if they want to be carpenters or sheet metal workers. And we have got to provide that in a way that is free. And second of all, as I said earlier, if we could bail out Wall Street and give $1.5 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% in private corporations, we damn well can cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator. The next question comes from Linda Flores. Let me get Chris up here. It is on immigration. Senator, please.
Hello, my name is Chris Vasquez from Frisco, Texas. Much of the immigration from Central America is due to instability in the Northern Triangle, which has been caused by failed U.S. foreign policy in Latin American countries.
Yes.
The Western Hemisphere is now as unstable as the Middle East. What types of policies would you put into place to help alleviate or mitigate the violence and corruption in Central America in order to create hope for cooperation and peace in our region of the world? Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Sanders.
much. Good question. You're looking at somebody who not only voted against the North American Free Trade Agreement, but helped lead the opposition to that. And one of the reasons was that I understood what would happen to farmers in Mexico and elsewhere who could not compete with the cheap corn manufactured in the United States. And your point, I think, is that as a result of that policy, a lot of small farmers in Mexico and elsewhere lost their farms. They no longer had any income. Where were they going to go? And they went north. Here is a promise that I make to you, because your point is very important. Everybody here understands that it is only under the most dire circumstances that a mom would take a baby by foot and travel 1,000 miles. That mother is fleeing the violence and the drugs and the cartels in Honduras and elsewhere. So here is my promise to you, is that very shortly after, I would say on the first day, but I have the feeling it's going to be a very busy first day. A lot of things. But very shortly, what we have got to do is deal with this crisis hemispherically. And that is, we need to bring the leadership in Honduras, in Guatemala, and El Salvador, and elsewhere, and Mexico, into the Oval Office and say, look, and you got a problem. There's corruption, no question about it. But how can the United States play a positive role in dealing with the violence and the terrible poverty that exists? Everything being equal, nobody wants to travel 1,000 miles. They'd rather stay home and live in peace and security.
Mencionó el Tratado de Libre Comercio con México y Canadá. Si llega a ser presidente, va a ratificar, va a mantener el nuevo acuerdo con estos dos países. You mentioned NAFTA. If you become president, or when you become president, would you support the implementation of the new agreement with Canada and Mexico?
Not the one that Trump is offering, but we do need a new agreement. What we need is, historically, trade agreements have not been written with the needs of working people or poor people in mind. Not the working people in the United States or in Mexico or in Canada, for that matter. They have been written to protect the best interest and the profits of the large multinational corporations who often write these agreements behind closed doors. So we do need a new agreement. but it's an agreement that works for the working people of Mexico, working people of the United States, and the working people of Canada.
We have 2 minutes left, Senator. May I please ask you on behalf, Pedro Calderon from West Hills, Wisconsin, asks this question. He says, as someone who previously supported your campaign and is supportive of universal health care for all, irrespective of its name, among other social programs, how specifically do you plan to convince the American people, not just the Democratic Party, that you are the right person for the role of President of the United States?
Well, this is an issue, in terms of universal health care, you're looking at the United States Senator who has led that effort for a number of years. You are looking at the senator who wrote the bill that has 15 co-sponsors in the Senate, and a similar bill in the House has well over 100 co-sponsors. And you are looking at the senator who is prepared to take on the greed of the insurance industry and of the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, in terms of health care, at the end of this month, if I might say, I'm going to do what I did 20 years ago. And that is, I'm going to take people from the United States across the Canadian border to buy insulin, in this case, for 1/10 of the price they're forced to pay in America. So, to answer your question, I believe the record will indicate that if you want somebody to stand up to the greed of the drug companies and the greed of the insurance companies, substantially lower the cost of medicine in this country, and guarantee health care to all people, if you're looking for somebody, look in this direction. I think I'm the guy.
Gracias, Senador.
Okay.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks, please. 2 minutos para las conclusiones del senador Sanders antes de despedirlo. Vamos a escuchar al senador Sanders. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, let me thank all of you and LULAC for the enormously important work you're doing, especially in this moment in American history. Just earlier today, I had a meeting with some folks here in Milwaukee, and I saw what I have seen time and time again. I've seen a young person come up with tears in her eyes, talking about her fears as an undocumented person. I have talked to young kids, 13 or 14 years of age, who are scared to death that when they leave school and go home, their mother or their father may not be there. Here is another promise that I make to you, and that is we will end the hatred. We will end the xenophobia that currently exists in this country. We will provide immediate legal status to the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. We will move to comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship for all 11 million undocumented. And we will develop a humane policy at the border, not one which criminalizes desperate people for having traveled 1,000 miles, not one that puts children into cages, not one that rips babies out of the arms of their mothers. This is not just what I want. This is not just what you want. This is, in fact, what the American people want. Together, we're going to end the hatred and the divisiveness and create the nation of love and compassion that we must become. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Thank you again. Muchas gracias. David Cruz, adelante.
El senador Bernie Sanders. Feel the burn. Okay. We're going to continue right now. Of course, we've had an opportunity now to listen to several of the candidates, 3 of them. May I please address this question to you? Will you stand? I know you're here with the green card veterans, and that's a very significant issue indeed. But tonight, you've heard 3 candidates talk about a lot of different things. What has most impressed you about what they've said?
Well, I've always been a fan of Bernie. He didn't disappoint tonight, but Ms. Warren definitely was very direct, no-nonsense kind of attitude that I think we need today.
Now, she's been called a lot of names by President Trump. Do you think, how do you think she would react if he calls her something like that in a debate if she is the nominee of this party?
She wouldn't care. She would just keep on going and stick to the issues.
So, tonight, have you made a different decision from what you came in thinking where you were going to stand?
Not yet.
All right, you're still weighing it. Okay, so I want to get reaction from different people in the audience. I'm going to come up here to this row. I know I'm a little bit out of the light, but I want to invite Lupe Torres to please come over, if I could, because she's someone who comes from the state of Texas, where LULAC has a long history, and is the immediate past state director of the organization, and you're handy, so I'm going to ask you over here. You've had a chance to study these candidates up close. You know Julian Castro. My question to you is this. Has he, Julian Castro, tonight held his own, or how would you rank them tonight? Can I ask you that?
Yes, I think that all three have had significant issues that Hispanic Americans care for. So it's going to be very difficult because I think they've all hit the nail on the head. And we just need to continue to see if they're going to continue straight on with those issues or change their minds because of various populations. But I think they all, so far, all three have done a terrific job.
In 30 seconds, I think that their tone somewhat changed. They feel more comfortable here. Do you think this is their setting where they feel that Latinos are indeed here to listen and support?
I think that they understand that LULAC is the most powerful Hispanic organization, and they need to bend the minds and address that. LULAC.
Thank you, Lupe Torres. We go back to Enrique.
Thank you. Gracias, David. Gracias por seguir con nosotros a través de esta transmisión especial desde Milwaukee, Wisconsin, de Frente al Voto, un foro con los precandidatos del Partido Demócrata a la presidencia, un foro en el que hemos tenido la oportunidad de platicar ya con 3 de estos aspirantes, primero con el secretario Julian Castro, la senadora Elizabeth Warren por Massachusetts y el senador Bernie Sanders. Vamos ahora a platicar con Beto O'Rourke, que nos acompaña esta noche. Welcome, Beto.
Muy buenas noches.
So you have 2 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we'll take it from there. Please.
Muy buenas noches. Huge honor for me to be here with you tonight. For those of you from El Paso, Texas, I knew you would be here. For those of you who are not from El Paso, Texas, let me just tell you, those friends of mine who are here with me tonight, we're lucky enough to live in what is the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere. Right in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, home to Chico's Tacos, but also 3 million people from 2 countries, speaking 2 languages, 2 histories, 2 cultures, who are joined and not separated by the Rio Grande River, forming something far greater and more powerful than the sum of the parts or the number of people involved. And El Paso, Texas today is one of, if not the safest cities in the United States of America. We are safe not despite the fact that we are a city of immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers. We are safe because we are a city of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees. And yet, inexplicably, given those facts, in the shadow of a wall that was built with the best of intentions, that has caused thousands of deaths of people who sought a better life in this country, we now have a Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, just outside of El Paso, that has housed hundreds of children, some separated from their parents, sleeping on concrete floors, under aluminum blankets, not afforded diapers for the toddlers, or cleaning supplies, or soap, or toothpaste for the older children. We have right now in America the largest incarceration of children who've committed no crime in the history of this country, with the exception of the internment of Japanese Americans. But I want to tell you this one last thing as part of my introduction. In that same community, we have a gentleman who may be here tonight, Ruben Garcia, and Annunciation House. This Catholic charity seeks to reunite those families that have been separated, provides housing and shelter for people who are at their most vulnerable and desperate moment in their lives. And Annunciation House is not alone. There are hundreds who keep vigil just outside that Clint Border Patrol station to report back to you and the rest of America just what is being done in our name. It convinces me that the worst of what is happening in America today and tonight will be met by the best of our fellow Americans, like those in El Paso, like the people here of LULAC, who are going to make sure that we live up to our potential and fulfill our promise. Thank you all for having us out here tonight.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please.
You got it.
That's it. I'm doing Spanish and English, a little bit of both. I know you understand Spanish very well, but if there's something in the question that needs translation, please let me know. Y quiero empezar con noticias del día de hoy. La administración Trump ha anunciado que a partir, no formalmente, ha sugerido que a partir del próximo fin de semana comenzarían redadas y deportaciones masivas en un universo de cerca de 2,000 migrantes, pero el titular de los servicios de inmigración y ciudadanía ha dicho que podrían ser hasta 1 millón de inmigrantes. These massive raids and massive deportations that supposedly could start this Sunday. What is your reaction to this announcement?
What President Trump is already doing, and I described some of it in El Paso, Texas. What he proposes to do this weekend, these massive raids and internal enforcement operations that are going to separate potentially thousands of families, many of whom have committed no crime against this country, pose no threat to the United States of America, not only will remain a stain on our conscience if we allow this to continue, but will also make us less safe as a country. Si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con el respeto y dignidad que merecen como humanos. To make our communities safe, we don't need to deport people or round them up. In fact, when immigrant communities fear local law enforcement, fear federal law enforcement, they're less likely to report crimes, to testify in trials, to serve as witnesses. They're no longer participating in the civic life of our communities, and we are less safe as a result. That's why, as president, I will lead the effort in rewriting our immigration laws in our own image to reflect our values, the reality on the ground here in Milwaukee, in El Paso, Texas, across this country, that the very presence of immigrants makes us stronger, makes us more successful, and yes, makes us safer and more secure. So let's do this. Let's forever after never criminalize another person who comes to this country seeking refuge or asylum at our border. Let's free every child who's detained right now and reunite them with their parents at once. Let's invest in strategies in El Salvador, in Guatemala, and Honduras to reduce the need to flee violence and crushing poverty and hunger. And let's make sure that the 9 million legal permanent residents here in the United States become citizens as soon as possible. The more than 1 million dreamers, never again fearing deportation back to a country they do not know, because we have made them citizens as well. And the millions more working some of the hardest jobs that we can imagine here in this country tonight, we allow them to come forward, to get right and register with their government and contribute even more to our success, our security, and our safety. That's what I will do as President of the United States. Thank you.
We can keep standing then. Le quiero preguntar, después del primer debate hubo muchos que pidieron que parte de la lista de aspirantes, más de 20, empezaran a ver hacia otros destinos. En su caso, que empezaran a concentrarse tal vez en el Senado en vez de aspirar a la presidencia. Many people after the first debate said, you know, why not you just focus on the Senate race instead of running for president? What is your reason for staying in this race right now?
I want to serve this country in the most consequential position available. I want to make sure that everything that we are discussing here tonight, that we are able to accomplish. And what I learned from that Senate run in Texas in 2017 and 2018, along with many of you who were part of that, is that if we go everywhere, we went to every single one of those 254 counties, if we write nobody off, no matter how red or rural their communities are, if we take no one for granted, no matter how big or blue, we can do nearly the impossible. At the end of the day in Texas, we won more votes than any Democrat in the history of that state. We won independence for the first time in decades. Young people turned out at an increase of over 200% of what they did in 2014. And though we did not win that race, there are now 2 new members of Congress from Texas, both Democrats replacing Republicans who helped to flip the House of Representatives. We've changed the composition of our state legislature, and we have 17 African American women elected to judicial positions in Harris County, changing the face of criminal justice in our most diverse city. What if we were able to lead a grassroots movement like that, all people, no PACs, across this country? I believe it is a movement and not a person that will defeat Donald Trump in 2020, a movement and not a person that will reunify this very divided and polarized country so we can work on the biggest challenges we have ever faced.
Thank you. And now that you mentioned President Trump, ahora que menciona al presidente Trump, ha dicho que su política exterior ha sido un desorden, un verdadero desorden. ¿Cuál sería el error principal que ha cometido el presidente Trump a su juicio en la arena internacional y cómo lo arreglaría? What would be the biggest mistake President Trump has done in terms of foreign policy, and how would you fix it if you become president?
There's an open question in the world tonight, and maybe here in this country, maybe in this room. Is the future a democratic one, where we freely choose those who will represent our interests, or is it an autocratic one, ruled by strongmen and dictators? Our president has chosen those strongmen. Vladimir Putin of Russia, who he not only invited to invade our democracy in 2016, but renewed the invitation just this year after the release of the Mueller report. Duterte in the Philippines, al-Sisi in Egypt. It is those strongmen and dictators to whom he has become close, while leaving behind our allies and the democracies, whether it is Mexico and Canada here in North America, or the European Union and NATO. How would I fix this? I will make sure that every challenge we face, whether it is a trade imbalance with China, whether it is the invasion of our democracy with Russia, whether it is a nuclear-armed North Korea or the potential of a nuclear-armed Iran, that we meet these challenges together, unified with our friends and our allies and our partners, those alliances in some cases forged in a crucible of blood and sacrifice going all the way back to World War II. And lastly, I want to make sure that we elevate the priority of this hemisphere in our foreign policy. It should not have come as a surprise to us that tens of thousands of children were willing to make an upwards of 2,000-mile journey seeking refuge and shelter and safety in this country. I want to make sure that we work with the communities in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, and work with those nations and other stakeholders and governments in the region to make sure that we address these issues before they become problems there or for us at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Muchas gracias. Prometo que es mi última pregunta de la noche para abrir las preguntas al público. La mitad, poco más de la mitad de los elementos de la patrulla fronteriza son hispanos. Muchos de ellos vecinos en El Paso, Texas. Nos enteramos hace unos días de una cultura de discriminación, de racismo, de mensajes de odio en un foro en medios sociales, en Facebook. ¿Qué le diría? ¿Cuál es el mensaje de Beto O'Rourke para los hombres y mujeres de la patrulla fronteriza esta noche? Sobre todo después de enterarnos de estos mensajes y de este foro.
Look, this is my message to the members of the Border Patrol, nearly 20,000 of them, who have one of the toughest jobs that I can imagine. They are to protect the United States against those who would smuggle illegal drugs or who would be involved in the smuggling of people. They must remain vigilant against the chance, though it has never happened before, that a terrorist or terrorist organization would seek to exploit our border and threaten the people of the United States of America. So my gratitude to them. But the job that they have and our gratefulness for the work that they do in performing it is not a license to mistreat people or act with impunity, as we have seen throughout the history of the Border Patrol. Now, whether it is the awful comments made about Representative Ocasio-Cortez or Representative Escobar when they visited that Clint Border Patrol station, or the inhumane treatment of children under their care, or the fact that 7 kids have died under their custody, or just after being in their custody over the last year, there has to be oversight, there has to be accountability, and there has to be justice. As a member of Congress, I wrote legislation and introduced it with a Republican to do just this, to make sure that those who carry that badge have that power over the rest of us and those who approach this country at the U.S.-Mexico border, have the oversight and accountability necessary. As president, I will guarantee it. I will make sure that if we are not able to do it legislatively, that we do it by executive order. So I am grateful for their work, but I want to make sure that we hold them to the highest of all standards.
Muchas gracias, congresista. David Cruz con las preguntas de la audiencia.
Welcome, Beto. We welcome you to the LULAC family. They have many questions for you. The first one comes from Maureen Montiel. Barbara is going to ask the question tonight. If I may ask her to step up, it has to do with the topic of equal pay.
Hello, my name is Barbara, and good evening. According to the CPS 2018 Annual Social and Economic Supplement, women employed full-time year-round are typically paid 80 cents for every dollar paid to men employed full-time year-round. Latinas in the United States are typically paid just 53 cents for every dollar paid to white, non-Hispanic men. How would you deal with this wage disparity?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. First thing we'll do is sign into law the Paycheck Fairness Act. And what this means is that in the workplace, you will no longer be penalized for sharing your wage level or wage history with fellow employees so that you know where you stand and that you can take action and have the support of the courts if necessary. We'll also ensure that previous wage history is not used as a factor in setting future wages. In other words, if you've been paid 53 cents on the dollar for the course of your working life, and that is used as a factor in setting your wages going forward, you'll always be pegged lower than where you should be. Y además, in addition, we're going to make sure that we ratify the Equal Rights Amendment so that enshrined in the Constitution is equal protection for every woman in this country on every issue, including their ability to perform in economic life in America. Thank you.
I want to thank you for that. Our next question is on the topic of LGBTQ. It comes from Jesus Garcia from Washington, D.C., and the question is going to be asked tonight by an alternate who is going to speak on his behalf. Please come forward. I'm actually Jesus Garcia. Oh, here you are. Well, great. You appear.
Thank you. Last year, FBI hate crimes report showed once again an increase in attacks against Hispanic and LGBTQ people in the United States. Each week we learned of new attacks or murders of transgender women of color. How would your administration work with law enforcement, the health department, and our education system to reduce hate crimes against marginalized communities?
Jesus, thank you for the question. I think we first have to acknowledge why some of this is happening at this moment in our country. For the last 3 years, there's been a rise in hate crimes every single year. When you have a president who describes Mexican immigrants as rapists and criminals, asylum seekers as an infestation, you have given tacit approval to those who would put those children in cages. When you sign an executive order attempting to ban Muslim travel to the United States of America, you may explain why on that same day, the mosque in Victoria, Texas was burned to the ground. And when you enact via Twitter a transgender troop ban, the violence that we've seen perpetrated against the transgender community under this administration, the otherwise inexplicable can become explained. But we must go further than reversing that transgender troop ban, which I will do on day one. We must also sign into law the Equality Act that guarantees the full civil rights of every single American. And we've got to look at...
I want to thank you for that response. The next question comes from Matilda Roybal. She is going to ask about climate, and she is from the state of New Mexico.
What are your plans to protect our environment and help with climate control?
Thank you for the question. We're going to make sure that we save this planet for the generations that follow ours. We're going to guarantee that those communities that are disproportionately impacted by climate change, very often lower income communities and majority communities, are fortified against the floods and the storms and the droughts and the fires that are part of the climate change that we're experiencing right now. We will do this by mobilizing $5 trillion over the next 10 years to invest in people and communities, in housing, in infrastructure, and embracing the next generation of the technologies that will allow us to be freed from a dependence on fossil fuels and to create the high-wage, high-value, high-skilled jobs that will come to America as a result. We'll also, we were talking about foreign policy earlier, we'll convene the other powers of this planet to make sure that each one of them is doing their part to keep global warming under 2 degrees Celsius, after which the storms, droughts, and fires and floods that we are seeing today will pale in comparison. In other words, if every one of us does everything that we can, meet this not with half steps or half measures or half the country, but include everyone in the solution, we will be up to the greatest, the most existential challenge we have ever faced.
We need to move on. Thank you, Senator. This question comes from Marco Cesar Lizárraga. Andres is going to step up now and ask the question. It has to do with the economy and the working middle class in America.
Thank you. My name is Andres Rodriguez, proud National Vice President for Young Adults and Collegiate Students. And the question is this: the middle class has been impoverished to an unbelievable level. Do you have programs that will bring back a true middle class of significant size?
Andres, thank you. The answer is yes. Let's begin by elevating the power and the prominence of unions. Make sure that more women and men can join an apprenticeship that will teach them a trade or a skill that they will command for the rest of their lives and will allow them to command a living wage for the rest of their lives. Let's make sure that college and higher education is affordable for every single American, and that we radically expand the public service debt forgiveness program. So for those who want to teach school or work at the VA, take care of those veterans who put their lives on the line for this country, they can focus on doing that because we'll have wiped clean their debt. Let's make sure that a minimum wage is a living wage, a floor of $15 an hour everywhere in this country. Paid family leave without exception for every American so you can take care of yourself, your family, and your kids. And then healthcare. Healthcare is fundamental to the success of this country and to the middle class. Universal, guaranteed, high quality, primary healthcare, mental healthcare, and every woman making her own decision about her own body and having access to the care that makes that possible. That's how we do this.
Senator, we have 1 minute left. 1 minute. How will you heal America after President Trump?
It certainly cannot be with more division, more pettiness, and more meanness. He is defining this country right now by the walls that he seeks to construct and the cages in which he has placed those kids. To that fear, we must bring our courage, our confidence, our ambition, and our aspirations, and we must bring everyone. We do not care. No me importa. If you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, if you live in a big city or a small town, we are not going to write you off. We are going to bring you in, not just into this campaign and into this election, but to every single solution, to every challenge that we face as a country.
Yes or no? Will you call immediately for the closure of the concentration camp child detention centers?
Yes.
Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias, David Cruz. Before we say goodbye, 2 minutes for your closing remarks, and I do want to make a point. Quisiera hacer un punto antes de las conclusiones del congresista O'Rourke. Hablaba de la idea de no ser demócratas y republicanos, de no dividir a nadie. Casi 40% de los hispanos que contestaron la encuesta de Univision recientemente apoyan un muro y ven a los centroamericanos, a muchos de ellos refugiados, como una amenaza en este país. No es una comunidad monolítica. Hay muchos hispanos que apoyan también al presidente Trump. En su conclusión, ¿podría también hablarles a ellos esta noche?
Sí. I mentioned El Paso at the outset of my comments, and I'd like to close with a reference to my community. Texas held the first boys high school baseball championship in 1949. And improbably, a team from the Segundo Barrio in El Paso, the Bowie Bears, Los Osos Orgullosos, entered that competition with their uniforms hand-sewn by their mothers, their gloves made from scrap material by their dads, won the city championship, won the regional championship, and then traveled by bus to Austin, a 9-hour trip where along the way, they were met by restaurants and hotels that said no dogs or Mexicans allowed. In fact, the night before they played that championship game, they slept on the field under the bleachers where they would compete the next day, and they won that game. And they bring back distinction and honor to El Paso, to Bowie, to Texas, to this country, an understanding of who we are at our best. And I will tell you, as they grew into adulthood, they met the racism, the intolerance, the denial of civil rights with that same courage and perseverance and ability to overcome. It's exactly what we need right now in this country at this moment. Whether the challenge is healthcare, or rewriting our immigration laws, or a more inclusive economy, or being there for those veterans who have borne the battle for this country. I want to make sure that we bring everyone in. Republicans, as Enrique was talking about. Democrats, folks who do not come to the same conclusion on the same issues that I do. Before we are anything else, race, ethnicity, religion, party affiliation, we are Americans first. We are human beings, and we're going to start to treat one another in that way, and that is the way that we will live to our full potential and fulfill this country's promise. Thank you all for having us out here tonight. Les agradezco. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. Gracias.
Beto O'Rourke. Y antes de despedirnos, quisiera volver a invitar a este escenario a Domingo García, el presidente LULAC, the president of LULAC, Domingo García. Thank you so much for an incredible evening. You get to wrap it up.
Gracias. Was that a great program or no? You know, in January of 1963, the grandson of Irish American immigrants for the first time addressed a LULAC meeting. That grandson was John F. Kennedy, okay? Today we carry on that tradition with our presidential candidates. So I want you to get out your cell phones, your cell phones, and I want you to go to text 52866, 52866, and put votar. And you tell us which presidential candidate, in your opinion, we're doing a straw poll here.
Sí. Los números están en pantalla, el número de texto está apareciendo en pantalla en este momento.
So 52886, put votar, and then pick the candidate who you thought did the best job. And let's keep on going. This is a new LULAC. We're on the move. If you're not registered to vote, vote. If you're a U.S. resident, become a citizen and get involved. Run for office. Adelante. Join LULAC. Gracias.
Gracias, Domingo. Vamos a ver algunos de los resultados simplemente antes de despedirnos y agradecerle a Domingo García, a toda la familia LULAC, a esta audiencia por recibirnos esta noche aquí a nombre de todos en Noticias Univisión. Agradecemos el favor de su atención. Agradecemos también a todos los que participaron. Por cierto, Beto O'Rourke en el gráfico de la encuesta, el sondeo al que acaba de convocar Domingo García, Beto O'Rourke va ganando y seguiremos llevando estos resultados a lo largo de la noche. Pueden votar en el 52886 en sus celulares. Bueno, gracias de nuevo a nombre de Noticias Univisión. Soy Enrique Acevedo. Les agradecemos a todos que hayan estado aquí. Muy buenas noches. Nos despedimos en más de Frente al Voto. Gracias, Domingo García. Muchas gracias. Simplemente pedir a la audiencia que sigan votando, que sigan participando y por supuesto que participen también en los medios sociales de Noticias Univisión, en Twitter, en Facebook, en Instagram. Tenemos nuestras cuentas para que puedan responder a todas las inquietudes y observaciones sobre este foro. Ha sido una noche en la que hemos platicado de inmigración, de economía, de empleos, de salud, de educación, de temas de política exterior. Hemos hablado también de asuntos relacionados con la frontera. Hemos tenido la oportunidad de escuchar a 4 de los aspirantes mientras vemos los resultados en nuestra pantalla de este sondeo que estamos haciendo en tiempo real, mientras Beto O'Rourke sigue adelante en este ejercicio. En segundo lugar, Elizabeth Warren. En tercer lugar, Bernie Sanders y Julian Castro, quien abrió la noche, sigue en cuarto lugar. Bueno, parte de este sondeo informal al que los hemos invitado. Bueno, nos despedimos el último minuto de transmisión esta noche. De nuevo, gracias a todos los presentes por recibir a Noticias Univisión. Tendremos mucho más de los candidatos en el debate, el tercer debate entre los candidatos demócratas a la presidencia, que celebraremos en Houston, Texas, junto con ABC News. Los esperamos ahí en septiembre para que sigan nuestra programación y nuestra cobertura de este proceso electoral. Es todo esta noche desde Milwaukee, en Wisconsin. Les da las gracias Enrique Acevedo. Muy buenas noches. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.